So this happened just last November on the 11th. I don't know why this happened or how, but this is my story, and I'm still very physically and mentally shaken from it. One night, I was just sitting down and watching some anime, chatting it up with my girlfriend, like we usually do. Well, around 10:50, my girlfriend was in the middle of a sentence, and then she suddenly stopped talking. I didn't know why, so I asked if everything was okay, but she shushed me. As I sat in my bed and listened, I heard a low, raspy voice call for her. I was confused because her mom and stepdad got in a fight, so her mom left and her stepdad went to work. So I don't know what I was hearing over the phone. Of course, I asked her if she was playing a prank on me to try to scare me or something. She does that every now and then. Next thing I know, we're back into a normal conversation. I still don't have an explanation, but I think something just startled her. Later on, we started to video chat, because she hated the feeling of the phone digging into her ear. So as we were video chatting, I heard a loud bang come from the kitchen, my kitchen. So I walk into the kitchen, only to find my dog getting into the pile of trash. He had tipped over the trash can. And then suddenly, I heard an even louder bang from upstairs. I was already up, so I went to check it out, and I noticed one of the big windows were wide open. When I walked up to close the window, I noticed that there was blood on the glass. There was even a tire laying on the floor and a dent in the wall. Now I have no idea what happened or how that got in there, but I decided to call the cops and let them investigate. Apparently the blood was from a cat, and the tire was from a small cell down the road. But that doesn't explain why the tire was on my floor when no one that lived here was up there or had brought it in. The police called it in as a man with mental issues and said, "We'll keep our eyes open for him, stay safe, and to try to trim the branches off the trees outside." All of this was more weird than creepy, to be honest. Eventually, I went back to my room, still on the phone with my girlfriend on video chat. And then she asked me, "Who was that standing behind you?" It sent chills down my spine. I asked, "What are you talking about?" This couldn't have been a man, because when she described it, through the little light I had, she said their arms were reaching out towards me, and whoever they were as tall as the ceiling. Now, if there was an 8-foot tall man and I walked straight past him, I think I would have at least seen him. But apparently, he only showed up for her. When I went back upstairs, I decided to look in the garbage can. And it turns out that whatever decided to throw the tire was at the garbage can too. Because inside the garbage can, there was a dead cat. And that's why my dog was getting into it. I wanted to throw up, and I did not want to be alone that night. Later on after that, after what my girlfriend had said, when no one was home, I would go down to the basement and turn on my camera and look behind me. I don't know if I was stupid or just curious or both. I wanted to see what she saw. But never once did I see anything behind me, though I did give myself a few good jump scares. On November 13th, I decided to take another look downstairs. And again, when I turned the camera on facing me, there was nothing there. I was about to shrug off the whole paranoia, but then I decided to switch the camera mode to face the front. And the moment I did, I wanted to die. Some sort of shadowy thing was sitting there on top of the washing machine, staring down at me. I nearly dropped my phone. I ran back upstairs so fast. While running, I switched the camera back to facing me, just to see if something was pursuing me. And luckily, there wasn't. The moment I was out at the basement, I heard the loudest baying coming from down there. But this time I decided it was not a good idea to go investigate. Well, at least until my brothers got home. When they did, we all went down together. We took out our phones and brought flashlights. And sure enough, that thing, whatever it was, showed itself to all of us. And once again, I found myself running up the stairs, this time with my brothers. I don't think any of us have ever been that scared in our lives. Once our mother was home, we confronted her. We told her that something was haunting this house, that we needed a priest or something to bless the home or at least take a look. Well, seeing that we were all saying the same thing, my mom decided to call a priest anyway, just to get us to shut up. I don't think she ever believed us. Later that week, when one came by, we told him what we saw. He blessed the home and went along with our stories. What was weird though, was the fact that the priest told us before he left to delete any photos or recordings, audio or video, of this thing if we caught any. Now, even if we had recorded it, I had never heard of a demon or ghost or anything like that becoming more angry and aggressive just for having pictures of it. And that creeped me out a little bit more. It kinda makes me worry that writing this and sending it out on the internet might not be the best idea. I don't know what that entity was, or if it even had anything to do with the cat in the trash can and the tire in our house. Maybe they're just two separate stories occurring at the same time. But it gets you thinking, if they really are two parts of the same story, that makes this demon even more terrifying. I live in a town just outside of Bath, England, and it was about a year ago or so when this happened. It was a Friday the 13th, and I love Friday 13ths, probably because I love anything and everything creepy. I'm really into paranormal stuff, and I watch paranormal shows all the time. Anyway, I was up at around 7:30 in the morning, getting ready for school. I had just finished my breakfast and was heading upstairs to clean my teeth. I was walking up the stairs and I looked through the wooden bars of the banister into my living room as the door was left open. I stopped and I stared. I was frozen as I stared at this animal. It had no face and it was on all fours and its skin was pale yellow. It had long black claws coming from its feet. It was there for less than a few seconds until it jumped unnaturally fast out of view from the doorway. I stood there absolutely petrified from what I just saw. After a few moments passed, once my heart rate slowed down, I moved my head into the direction of where it jumped so I could further see into the living room. And I saw nothing. Whatever it had been, it was gone. The speed at which it moved, though, was so unnatural. It was almost a blur when it jumped. My mom walked by. She saw that I looked shocked and a little scared, and asked me if I was okay. I said nothing, and just began walking upstairs again. I could not dismiss what I saw. How could any creature on this earth just disappear like that? And what even was that thing? I began to hope I was seeing things from being tired or paranoid. I carried on and got myself ready for school. I left and began to walk to school. I only live a few minutes away from it. I always walk with my earphones in, listening to music, so I don't really pay much attention to anything else. I walk onto this path, which was very open with some small houses to the left and an open grass field to the right. Ahead of me was a small paved car park for a social club, which was also up ahead. Ahead of that and to the right was a set of flats. As I approached this area, I looked over to the right and looked at the building of flats, and I was shocked to see that thing there again. It was just next to the building on the grass, and once again it jumped behind the building out of my view. And once again I found myself so scared, yet this time I didn't stop. I began to nearly run, and I didn't dare to look back to see if that thing was still there, let alone following me. The rest of the way to school, I was paranoid that that creature was still following me and stalking me. And when I got to school, I felt a bit more relaxed. I told my friend and a teacher at school about what I saw. My friend believed me, but the teacher wasn't as convinced. She said that it might be brain damage, which made me laugh, and it made me worry at the same time. Whatever it was, I didn't see it for the rest of the day, and I haven't seen it since, thank God. I don't really know what the creature was, and I don't know if it was my imagination running wild because it was the 13th, or if this thing was real and it was stalking me. The creature itself was unreal, and nothing on this planet can simply disappear like that. Was it the ghost of something, a creature of the paranormal? But I would love to know if anyone else has experienced anything like this, as I'm really doubting if it was even real. I'm just so glad that I've never seen it again, whatever that ghostly beast was.
I've never really believed in any supernatural hauntings before, but what I experienced in the orchard a few years ago still haunts me to this day. Walking home from school one day, one of my friends named Brian told me about an orange orchard here in the city where I lived at the time. He told me if you're walking in the orchard at 12 in the middle of the night, you'll see something like a ghost in the orchard. I didn't believe in ghosts at the time, so I just thought he was making up stories to scare me. Then he told me that one time when his dad was driving home with his dog Pepper in the truck, his dog jumped out of the truck and ran into the orchards. Of course, his father stopped the truck and went into the orchards to find the dog. Walking inside them, he found the dog on the ground, whimpering as if it had been hurt. His dad carried the dog out of the orchard and back to the truck, but while walking he saw something like a shadowy, slender figure running through the orchards. The noises it made were inhuman and terrifying. After telling the story, Brian dared me to go into the orchard to find out for myself, and I accepted the challenge. He told me the location of the orchard. So I woke up at 11:30 that night, threw on some clothes and rode my bike to the orchard. I was a bit headstrong back then, and I would do anything to prove my bravery. I believe I arrived at the orchards at 11:55 that night. I walked into them and brought only my video camera to record my experiences. Thinking back on it, I wish I had brought a friend. I stopped where I was surrounded by orange trees all over, and I hit record on my camera. I waited until it was 12. While waiting though, I was staring at the oranges on the trees. I smelled the air, then shifted my gaze into the stars of the night sky, listening to the air passing by my ears. Soon it was 12 midnight, and I'd got myself in the mood to be scared. I began to walk around inside the orchard, keeping my eyes peeled for anything bizarre. For a while, I was more worried about there being security around the orchard or something. I really didn't think I'd see anything more than just trees. Even still, I continued walking. Soon, I heard a shout from far away in the orchard. It sounded like someone was yelling. It might have been the owner, so I stayed hidden and low, and I slowly made my way back out of the orchards. But the shouting drew closer and changed in tone. It was some kind of yelling, and I couldn't tell what it was saying. But very quickly, one thing became clear. This voice did not sound human. I looked over where the yelling was coming from, and I saw a red light moving side to side. Then another red light came, and they just both disappeared. Luckily, I had my camera on them the whole time. Walking back where I had my bike, I heard walking behind me, footsteps hitting the ground hard. I turned around. Seeing what was behind me haunts my dreams to this day, and it makes me regret ever going into that orchard. On the ground before me lay a corpse. It was covered in rotting scratches, and the head looked like it was burned by fire. The flesh on its head was brown and crisp, showing part of the skull from the forehead to the chin. I nearly screamed, but before I did, I blinked, and when my eyes opened again, the corpse was no longer lying down. It was standing up. It was looking up at the night sky, releasing a terrifying screeching moan, and it made me fall to the ground, screaming in panic. Was I hallucinating? I pulled myself up as fast as I could, and I ran full speed to where I had my bike. And at the same time, my heart felt like it was going to explode. I turned my head around and saw that whatever was there was gone. But there was something else in its place, a silhouette of a tall, thin figure. It was nothing more than a shadow, a slender shadow. Not soon enough, I burst out of the orchard, hopped onto my bike, and rode home as fast as I could. When I arrived home, I fell in my bed and covered myself in the sheets. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could not stop thinking about what I saw. The things I witnessed that night proved me wrong about ghosts not existing, and it stopped me from going out at night alone for a long time.
I often spend the night or the weekend at my friend Sarah's house. Normally, we would hang out upstairs and then get to the basement for the night, as down there she has 2 huge couches we can sleep on. The way her basement is, when you get down the stairs, you are right in the middle of it. So everything is either on your right or on your left. To your right, there would be the television and couches where we sleep, and in front of that there would be a little workplace with a computer. On the left, there is a very small bathroom, a room that is used for Sarah's nieces and nephews when they come over. And beside that room would be the room. It's not a particularly creepy room. There's only a huge bed, a closet, a big wardrobe, and a commode. Yet, there's some atmosphere in there that makes the room scary. It's extremely uncomfortable just to look into the room from where you're standing. And this is a feeling everyone that has ever gone in the room has had. So it can't only be me and my friends being crazy or just paranoid, whatever it was. We all believe there's something in this room, even if we cannot know what exactly it is. We have never seen anything, yet for some reason I've always assumed it was a woman. Maybe it's intuition or something else. I would be happy if I could say that this is all the room is about, just an irrational feeling of dread. But sadly, this is not the case. Many things happened in that room, around that room, in the whole house in general. First of all, this uneasy feeling you got from the room. It would always grow worse and worse at night. And the feeling would be felt everywhere around the house, spreading from the room, even with the lights turned on. So much so that we couldn't bear being in the basement when the door of this room was opened. We would have to shut it. Each night, we would take turns to close it, and each time we hated doing it. We always feared we would see something in the dark of the room, or getting our hand or arm grabbed by some unseen entity. Of course, all of this could just be us overreacting. But one day, as it was my turn to close the door, I felt unusually bad around it. For some reason, the feeling was stronger. I closed the door, and as soon as the door clicked shut, something fell somewhere inside the room with a loud noise. And there was nothing even close to that door, so it couldn't have been something leaning against the door or even the wall behind it. It sent chills down my spine. A while later, I was cleaning around the kitchen at around 10 p.m. or something like that. There was only me awake at the time, as Sarah's parents were gone and she was sleeping already. Everything was going fine. I was washing our dishes and replacing everything we had moved to make food, when suddenly, I felt as if I was being watched. And when I say watched, I mean that it felt like someone was standing right behind me, as if they were staring intensely at the back of my head. It felt the same as the energy from the room. There was no doubt about it. I did not feel good at all, and I wanted to scream and cry. But I didn't. I've heard that some spirits just want to scare you. So I tried to ignore it. I kept on cleaning and paid no attention at all to the feeling. After maybe 20 minutes of it, as quickly as it came, the feeling suddenly left. Maybe a month or so later, a boy named Maxime, Sarah, and I were just hanging out in the basement. We were watching TV and playing around on her computer, and for some reason we started talking about that one room. Maxime said that he too could feel something bad from it. I then spoke about my theory that there was a woman, and I could even say in which corner she would be. Maxime was curious, so we all stepped into the room. At the same moment, the phone upstairs rang, which made us all jump, and we walked out of the room. And when we did, the phone stopped ringing. It was just one ring alone, not consecutive rings like a phone usually would, and we know that no one had answered it. So we didn't go back in that room. Yet, this isn't what scares me the most about it. What really scares me the most is that on 2 occasions, I felt this nagging in the back of my head, like I needed to go to sleep in there. The first time it was just a feeling of, I want to sleep in that room. And when I did go to sleep in there, that feeling of dread wasn't as strong, though I had to sleep with the light on. It was weird, and I never understood why I had the feeling that I wanted to go in there, but nothing happened on that night. The second time, however, was far creepier, especially considering the reason I ended up in the room. It was Sarah's birthday, and we were having a sleepover with 5 or 6 other friends. We were all in the basement, separated in different places around and on the couches. It was getting really late, and only Jennifer and I were still awake and finishing the movie. At some point though, my breathing began to feel off, and it hurt. It was like a feeling of drowning. It was so vivid. I could even feel, or more like hallucinate, the water burning my lungs and throat. I was truly scared, and I really wanted it to stop. It was painful and terrifying. I looked at Jennifer and told her, "I feel like I'm drowning." And then I stood up and walked over to the room. I closed the door behind me, and almost instantaneously the feeling left, and I nearly felt secure. I felt completely normal and even good in that room. I slept there that night, and I never felt scared until I woke up in the morning and realized the whole situation. What was happening to me, it wasn't normal. I have no idea what's in that room, but it sure is creepy. And I really hope that this thing doesn't try to lure me into its room ever again. But I know it will, and I'm so scared that it will make me feel like I'm drowning again, only to have me as company for the night.
Paranormal experiences must run in my family or something. I've heard a ton of stories from most of my family, and I'd like to share a few. My mom told me of the time when she, my dad's sisters, and a few cousins of hers played with a Ouija board. This is before my parents were married. They were hanging out together at one of her cousins' houses, and no parents were home. So they thought it would be the perfect time to play with the Ouija board that they had secretly bought. So they played, and they asked the normal questions. Is anyone there? What's your name? Stuff like that. The planchette moved though, and they were all skeptical at first. My mom got a little freaked out, especially if no one else was actually moving it. They were all scared, and they decided to say goodbye and put it away. After they said bye, the phone rang. When someone answered it, there was no one there on the other side. They hung up, only for it to ring again and again and again. Every time they answered, no one would be on the line. After several times, they stopped answering and let it ring. Then doors all throughout the home began to open and slam shut around them. They decided to throw away the board, and it stopped. But after an hour, it began again. So they decided to grab the board, and after some research, decided to burn it. They took it outside and threw it in the fire pit, and set it on fire, and the second it began to burn, they heard a blood-curdling scream echoing from the flames. That was the last time she ever played with the Ouija board. She's a very religious person, and unlike most parents, she always believed me about my stories. Something else also happened when my brother was 5. He woke up one morning to my great-grandmother sitting at the end of his bed. She said to him, "Don't worry, I'm with Jesus now." This scared him. He ran downstairs and told Mom, and she thought he had just been dreaming. But later that evening, she got a phone call from the hospital. Apparently, she had died at about 4 a.m. in the morning. My mom looked at my brother in tears, as she remembered what he told her that morning. Now, my story is a bit different. When I was 11, I finally got my own room because my older sister moved out, and my other older sister moved into that room. I then moved into the smallest room in the house. My younger brother shared a room, so they got the biggest. But I didn't complain. I loved my room. It was the right size. A year passed by and nothing strange happened. Until one night. You ever get the feeling in the middle of the night that someone is watching you sleep, and the feeling is so strong that it wakes you up and you have to check around you? Well, I got it, and I woke up to a black figure standing at the edge of my bed, just watching me. I was horrified. I shut my eyes tight and pulled the blankets over me. I didn't open them for what felt like half an hour. When I finally did open them back up, it was gone. But that wasn't the last of it. This kept happening until I wasn't scared of it anymore. Years passed and the shadow figures would still linger, but they never did any harm. Occasionally, though, they would touch my feet, and they would wake me up in the middle of the night, or smack against my windows or door. But that's it. I'm 15 now, and it's still happening. I haven't told anyone, especially my mom, because after her childhood Ouija board experience, she gets very paranoid about avoiding such demonic things. But told her about this, she'd probably try to control every aspect of my life to get rid of it, or even blame me for it, because of the music I listen to or the movies and shows I watch. She thinks they open gateways to let demons in. I don't know about that, but I ignore it and go on with my life. A lot of people joke about paranormal encounters, saying that it's a joke, saying that it's all not real, that can be explained away. But let me tell you something. That's from people that never experience anything themselves. They think they're right, because that's all they know. But if it ever happens to you, it's not funny. It's not a joke, and it's 100% real. I don't think people will ever understand. My first encounter happened about 8 months ago. I was lying down trying to fall asleep. I had my computer on playing a TV show. I always had to have my background noise. So with the computer open, there was a little bit of light, but not enough to completely light up my room. I was lying on my back when I suddenly heard a loud sound of a motorcycle or car driving by. I lifted up my head to see the car light bouncing off my room, and as it lit everything up, I thought I saw for a moment something in the corner of my room. I thought for sure that it was just the shadow of something from the car light. The car beam slowly faded away, and the fear swept over me when I realized that the car was long gone. I was now certain that something was standing in the corner of my room, and I knew that I was in a state of fear because whatever it was slowly began to move towards me. The detail that made me know that it was not human was when it was moving towards me, there was no movement or steps or anything of the sort. The way it moved, it was like it was gliding across the floor. It was coming closer until it was basically leaning over me, standing next to my bed. I felt a frigid chill lay over me. I pulled my blankets over my face, and when I peeked my eyes out to see if that thing was still there, it was gone. I was relieved, and I tried my best to get back to bed, but I simply couldn't stop wondering if that thing would come back. Even still, every night, I get a little bit more worried that whatever it was will come back again. My next experience was only 1 to 2 weeks ago. I was in my room with my door open, waiting for my mom to come home. I was watching some YouTube videos. I had just finished a video when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I got up and waited for a second, because something felt off. Something just didn't feel right. I heard the front door open. Still skeptical, I slowly headed downstairs. I heard my mom walking through the house, heading toward the living room. I got downstairs and checked around, but there was nobody home. When I checked the driveway and saw that no one had pulled in, I bolted back upstairs, locked my door, and dove into my room. The sound of someone walking in the house, the sound of someone pulling up in the driveway. It was plain as day. I know I didn't hallucinate it. Then I began to hear those footsteps again, now going back towards the door. The door opens and closes. I can hear it. And whatever was downstairs left. Again, I crept downstairs. I should mention that when this happened, it was snowing outside. So if someone really was there and went outside, I would see wet spots or rock salt on the floor. But when I got downstairs, there was nothing on the floor. They were perfectly clean. Ever since then, I never feel completely alone when I'm home alone.
My story isn't long. It's one that is creepy, and although I was very young, it sticks out to me still, clear as day. And I know that it really happened. My anxiety is building up, just remembering it. Now, as I recall, I was about 3 years old when this happened, and before you think no one remembers things before they're 4, this memory was very traumatizing, so much so that it stuck with me forever. It was a typical night. My mother got me ready for bed, and my dad tucked me in after. My room was right next to my parents' bedroom. I was still sleeping in a crib at this time. I remember lying there in the darkness, because I never would go to sleep when my parents put me to bed. And when I looked at the end of my crib, I saw this dark form. When I say dark, I mean it was so dark that it made my already dark room look like shade on a sunny day. And then it spoke to me in a deep voice, saying, "If I don't get you now, I'll get you someday." I began to scream for my parents, and as soon as my dad came and flipped on the light, the dark figure was gone. Just like that. After this experience, I never slept in the dark again. I absolutely had to have a nightlight, and to this day, I'm not ashamed to say that at 26 years old, I rarely will sleep alone in the dark. I had to have my dog with me at the very least. At the time of this incident, I was not yet baptized or anything like that, because my mom believed that I should make my own religious choices as I got older. I don't know what that thing was, whether it was a demon or just a dark entity of some kind in the house trying to scare me. I don't know if it's going to come back. As I got older, I did become a Christian, and I did get baptized, though I'm not super religious or anything like that. I haven't really had any more paranormal experiences like that since, other than my dad visiting me and talking to me after he passed. I don't know why I felt compelled to share the story, but I think as children we are more sensitive to the paranormal, especially compared to adults. So if your child is saying there was something in their room, you might not want to doubt them. This story happened to my younger brother, Wyatt. One night last year in 2016, my teenage brother fell asleep after a long night of gaming with his friend from England. At 3:16 a.m., I woke up with my heart pounding out of my chest, and at first I didn't know why. Then I heard it. My brother was screaming. It was so loud and full of dread. The only way I know how to describe it was a death scream. I remember getting out of bed and going to my bedroom door so fast I didn't even register what was going on, until I saw my brother running up the stairs. He was crying and screaming. My dad, so surprised and frightened, he was halfway downstairs himself with a shotgun. He had assumed that someone broke into the house. Through tears, my brother managed a few half sentences. I saw something. There was something in the living room by the door. After making sure there was not a physical intruder in the house, my dad came back to my brother, who had managed to stop crying and resume breathing normally. He was then able to tell us what happened. I think I was asleep and dreaming, but it wasn't a normal dream. I was in the house and I saw my body on the couch. I was still sleeping. I walked outside, and when I came back in, something followed me. I saw it by the kitchen. It was tall, and it had a white face with spiky hair. It made a terrifying growling noise. I screamed and ran over to my body and jumped back in it. And when I did, I woke up, and I was still screaming. At first, I passed it off as a nightmare. I thought my brother had just stayed up too late. Maybe he had watched Insidious with his friend over Skype. But over the next few days, it was clear to me that he was really shaken. He barely slept, and he began to sleep on the floor in my parents' room. About a week after the first incident, we were downstairs watching TV together, and he fell asleep. He was barely out for like 10 minutes, when his whole body began to jerk, and he woke up screaming again. As it happened, I could feel my skin turn to goose flesh. When he calmed down enough for me to ask him what was wrong, he said that he saw his body again, but this time he didn't leave the house. He said he went to touch his body to shake himself awake, and in the reflection of our mom's glass china hutch doors, he saw the white face of some demon. It had a white face with stringy hair hanging from it, and its eyes were solid black. At this point, I was really worried for my brother. As he said this, he was looking around. He seemed so jumpy and terrified. These occurrences were keeping him from sleeping, and it was really starting to put me on edge. After seeing the effect that it had on my brother, my parents informed our pastor at church. He informed us that some sort of evil entity has invaded our house. He prayed for my brother and gave us a bottle of holy oil to anoint our home and ourselves with. We poured that stuff liberally around the doorways in the house and the windows and dabbed some on ourselves. So far, so good. My brother hasn't had any other out-of-body experiences, but after everything that has happened, I can't help but feel as scared as my brother looked.
grew up north of Orlando, Florida. Where I lived was kinda in the middle of nowhere, and the nearest store was 20 minutes away. So yeah, it really was the middle of nowhere. When I was around 8 or 9 years old, I had a few strange things happen to me in our home. Nothing too bad, but it made me think. The first incident was someone calling my name. I would always ask my parents or my sister if they had called me, but they never did. The second incident, which started to really creep me out, was I would get woken up by someone shaking me awake. Now, to make it clear, whatever shook me was grabbing me by the hand or my feet. And again, I would ask anyone if they tried waking me up, but they would say no and look at me in confusion. Yes, this is kinda creepy, but what comes next still terrifies me to this day. One night, I woke up needing to use the restroom really bad. The bathroom was right next to my bed, while my sister's room was across from my door. The living room was next to my sister's room, and I had a family room behind the living room which I could see from my bedroom. Beside my room was our front door and the kitchen. Anyway, I'd get up and head to the bathroom. I happened to look toward the family room, and I wish I never did. Plain as day, there were two glowing red eyes looking toward our kitchen. And immediately I froze, trying to explain away what I was seeing. Maybe it was some sort of reflection. I was terrified and filled with dread, and when explaining it away didn't work, I started blinking, thinking I was maybe seeing something or maybe something was in my eye. Then I began hoping I was in a nightmare, but after a certain blink, its gaze was now on me. My eyes widened, and I could not scream. The thing never moved, but the eyes were fixed on me, and I was more sure than ever that this was all too real. After what felt like an eternity, I was able to move one of my fingers enough to close my door. The moment I broke eye contact, I could finally move. I ran to my bed and got under the covers. I was thinking it was going to come after me, that I would hear animalistic, large footsteps coming my way. But I never did. Needless to say, I barely got any sleep the rest of the night. And of course, when I told my family about it, they didn't believe me. Also, this was the last experience I had in that home as well. Now, I know I wasn't dreaming. I know I had gotten out of bed, and I saw that thing. I had never been more lucid. I know what I saw, and I will never forget it. Even as I'm typing this experience, I'm getting goosebumps just recalling it. Call me crazy, but I swear I can still sometimes see those eyes when I close my own. When I was 8 years old, my sister and my mom moved to live with my grandmother due to my father beating my mother. The first few months there were fine and my grandmother's, but I remember when we would visit, there was something so strange about my cousin Lily's room. It never felt right. There was always a feeling of something watching you, as if someone was in there with you, even if you were alone. So my sister Ellie and I always thought that the room was haunted. Now, in her room there was a door leading to the attic, and the attic itself was small and narrow. One day we decided to play questions with whatever it was. We said to anything that would answer, to knock once for yes and 2 for no. Then we would ask questions like, is your name Jack or Mary? Stupid questions like that. Then we began to ask how long you've been here, and did you die here? And that's when we suddenly heard a knock above us. My sister and I jumped and we looked at each other. Did we just hear what we thought we did, or did we imagine it? So we asked, do you want to get out? And that's when we heard the sound of running in the attic, rapid footsteps quickly approaching the door to this room. And when we heard the sound of banging at the door, we ran out of the room as fast as we could and down the stairs. We never told our mom or grandmother, but we did tell our friend Jim, who lived up the road from us. He and his cousin came one day, and we all decided to ask questions again. But nothing weird happened that day, so eventually we left and decided to play outside. A few weeks passed. My mother, sister, and youngest and myself slept in the same room. It was my aunt's old room, and me and my sister, believing the whole place was haunted now, we still slept there, thanks to the comfort of having family around. Like the other room, this one was very close to the attic, In fact, there was a single bed very close to the attic door in that room. My mother and sister slept on a double bed. Anyway, on this night, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I looked up to see a tall man wearing a top hat, but he was all black like a shadow. I could make out his shape, but none of his features. I closed my eyes tightly, hoping he didn't see me. I pulled the covers over my head. I didn't know what to do. Eventually, I got the courage to pull the covers down and to see if he was still there, but I didn't expect to see the form of his face, inches from mine. I screamed, jumping out of my bed and jumping into my mother's, and of course she was angry. She ended up switching spots with me, thinking that that's what I wanted, but I can tell you now that I did not sleep for the rest of the night. In the morning, I told my sister what I saw, and to my surprise, she told me she saw the same figure standing next to the wardrobe. Before that, I had been wondering the whole night if it was just a nightmare, but hearing her say this, it confirmed what I saw, and even if it was still a nightmare, the fact that we shared the same one was terrifying enough. We never told our family about anything we saw, and to this day they still don't know. It's been about 5 years now, and I'm still scared of both rooms. Luckily, we're moving soon, so I'll have to suck it up until then.